Think you need 20 acres and a big red barn to start homesteading? Nope, completely wrong. You can start in the suburbs in an apartment, maybe even just have a small sunny window to work with and still have a thriving and successful homestead. And in this video today, I'm going to explain to you how you can do that. Hi, I'm Becky, and I'm here to help busy women just like yourself learn to grow self-sufficiency wherever you live right now. Use what you got. Let's get into it. It's all about making the best of what you have and learning to work with it. If you're small on space, there are still plenty of things that you can do homesteading wise. There's so many different outlets to homesteading, and like I've explained it before, it's kind of like an umbrella. If you imagine all the little like sprockets, I don't know if that's the right word or not, that come off an umbrella. That's like homesteading. So you have this big old area that you can be underneath and pick and choose what aspects that you want to work with. So if you want to grow food, but you don't have the space for a full-on garden, maybe you don't have a backyard, you can still utilize a sunny windowsill or a balcony. You can really get into vertical gardening and container gardening. They have a lot of really good channels on YouTube, and there are some in particular that grow like their full pantry vertical gardening just on their back patio. So don't think that you can't just because you're low on space. There's also the matter of homemade cooking and preserving your food. None of that you have to have space for. All you have to do is have a kitchen. And if you don't have a kitchen, you just need a burner that you can set outside. A lot of people still can all their food outside. There are a lot of burners on the market that you can use outside with a propane tank. You don't have to have the big ones. They have small ones, and you can still learn to preserve food that way. You can be drying your food. You can dehydrate it in an oven or actually have a dehydrator. There's a lot of different aspects to homesteading, and it doesn't all have to do with acres and acres of land. Now, when it comes to livestock, you will be minimized a little bit on certain things that you can have. It doesn't mean that you can't have a fresh, organic beef in your freezer. I mean, you can definitely outsource. There are a lot of 4-Hers and a lot of farmers, I guess, depending on what area you live in, that you can purchase from. You just have to think of it as saving up your money, and you're buying your year's worth of meat all at one time. So while it may be a few $100s out of your pocket and it seems so expensive, the quality of meat will be so much better, and you don't even have to raise it yourself. You can just buy it from your local farmers. A lot of times you can buy a quarter beef, a half a beef. You can split it with your family members, and that's also a great way to go. Now, if you do have a small balcony or a small backyard, you still have some livestock options. Always make sure you check with your zoning laws and regulations. Sometimes they're kind of finicky with what things that you can have. Chickens are always a great option. I feel like that's the gateway animal to most homesteads, and it's all obviously on the rise, especially with the egg prices we've been having the last few years, or not having any eggs on the shelves. And you really only need a couple, depending on how big your family is. You only need a few hens to supply your family with fresh eggs. If you have a small area that you can keep rabbits, that's a great meat opportunity for you. You don't need a lot of rabbits to provide your family with homegrown meat. A lot of times people will start out with like a breeding trio. They reproduce really fast, which is why it is definitely something a lot of homesteaders get into. You don't need a lot of space for composting. You can buy a lot of those easy like DIY bins that you can buy off of like Amazon that are fairly cheap, that are like apartment ready. You can just put it right outside your door and you add your stuff to it, and it has a little handle and you can turn it. You can also get into vermiculture, which you just essentially need like a space that you can put a tote in with a temperature controlled area. Vermiculture is actually super easy. It's pretty much the same thing as composting, but instead of letting all of your kitchen scraps break down by themselves and using that organic material for your garden, you are using the worms. You're essentially feeding the worms to break down all their food, and you're using the worm castings into your garden instead. Now, as time frame goes, it's about the same depending on if you're doing a cold compost or a hot compost. I can do a whole other video on composting. There's a lot to it, and it can take as long as a year, but up to 6 months, depending on what kinds of things you're putting in it. When it comes to vermiculture, you're looking more at like 4 months before you can use those worm castings. Are great for your soil. Has a lot of nutritional content, and it's just kind of a fun little science experiment to do yourself, or if you have kids, that's something they may be really interested in. Speaking of science experiments, you can always get into fermentation. That's not anything you need a whole lot of space for. You can make homemade cleaners, bread, broth, muffins, pancakes. There are a lot of different things that you can make from home. You don't got to be shy about it. It's just having that can-do attitude and starting. I feel like sometimes that is the hardest part, is just starting. You know, you feel like, well, oh, someday I will start a homestead. Someday I'll learn how to do this. And the most invaluable tool you can have in homesteading is a positive mindset and a growth mindset, because there are so many things that you can learn. It is just astounding what you can be capable of. You don't have to wait for someday acreage. You can start right now in your kitchen, in the suburbs, in an apartment, in a camper, wherever you're at. The whole point is just learning to work with what you got and making it work for you and your family and your lifestyle. Homesteading doesn't start with land, it starts with you. Just keep in mind that if acreage is in your someday plan still, that is completely fine. There's still no reason you can't start today and take all of these new skills with you to your new property, and you'll already have a jump start on this whole thing that we call homesteading. So what are you going to start with today?